Hi everyone, and a good afternoon and welcome to Studio LINKIT. This time we'll be talking about Mendix, and I am joined with 3 panel experts because I cannot tell you enough about Mendix to keep talking for a full hour. And I would love my panelists to introduce themselves. Can I start with you?
Of course, thanks. Yeah, so my name is Stefan de Groot. I've been working with low-code platforms for about 4.5 years now within Lidl Netherlands. Been part of the whole low-code journey of the Swartz group. Worked a lot together with international colleagues, setting up the platform starting from zero. And currently I'm the team lead of Lidl Netherlands, and yeah, we're involved in a lot of cool Mendix projects. So yeah, really happy to join and speak with my 2 fellow panelists about the topic.
Nice, thank you for being here. And then we have Bob as well.
Yeah, I'm Bob van Heister. I'm the tech lead Mendix at LINKIT. My first encounter with Mendix was about 5 years ago when I started developing on the Mendix platform, and I saw the true speed of the platform itself and how easy it is to develop with Mendix. So I was immediately sold. I started as a developer at an organization, moved my way up to a team lead there. And when LINKIT decided to also onboard Mendix within their portfolio, for me that was an excellent chance to join LINKIT. And yeah, currently responsible for the complete Mendix team here, and also looking forward to talk with these experts here on Mendix.
Nice, last but not least.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Westort. I'm currently architect within Mendix. There I help teams to make the developer portal, but also help with the cloud section where you all guys all run your apps, of course. My first encounter with low-code was 5 years ago when I joined Mendix. I came from a Java background and I became Mendix Blue quite quickly. I really like the low-code way of developing apps, and I'm happy to share knowledge and experience today in this session with you.
Cool, nice. And then I'll just introduce myself really quickly. My name is Lieke. I'm an event manager at LINKIT, and with my team I made this all possible, so that's why these experts are here today. And I have one more person to introduce to you, and that is Gino. That's our moderator of today.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Lieke.
You're welcome, very short, nice. Let's just jump right in, because we had some questions sent in beforehand. We thought of some questions because I have a cool team who does know stuff about Mendix and wants to challenge you guys. And if you have a question at home, you're watching and you're like, oh, hold on, I want to know something about this more, drop it in the chat, and Gino will make sure that your question gets asked. First of all, everything starts with a base. What is important about a good base, and what defines a good base in the Mendix world?
Yeah. I think Mendix has a really nice story, and I like it about the start, structure, scale. So first start with your first app, then structure your app and get to know how you would like to build your ways, to make it uniform, and that everything, that people know how they are developing, and everybody can develop in the same way so that you keep it maintainable. And at that point, you're going to move towards the scale phase, which I think we will talk about in the session mostly. But I think the good base is a good structure to build your complete team. And part of that, I think, is your governance regarding your Mendix governance and your strategy as well. And I think that's built typically on coding guidelines and project management, basically, for the team itself.
Yeah, actually I agree quite a lot with Bob. What I think is important in a good base is that you have a vision where you want to go with the platform, first of all, because I mean, technology in itself, of course, it's fun to work with, but it should always serve the business purpose. Yeah, and that's where I think if you start to scale up your low-code portfolio, your Mendix portfolio, really think about a few key concepts within your organization. To make it practical, if you think for our organization, a supermarket chain, a retail chain, stuff that's very important, of course, are the concept of a product, of an employee, of locations, stuff like that. Really think about how do I want to incorporate those in my Mendix apps, and do I maybe need to make some shared modules that I want to use as a single source of truth about those concepts, for example. How you do that in a technical way, maybe Chris and Bob can fill me in on that. But really it's important to think about that and think a little bit ahead of where you're at right now, and don't think in limitations of, maybe that's really difficult or stuff like that, but think about the vision, where you want to go, and what these key concepts are.
Yeah, definitely. And what could go wrong if you don't have a good base, maybe?
Well, I think that the base is also recognition for your development team. So if you have standard modules you develop in a standard way, you have these concepts clearly defined. Everybody recognizes what is happening, so if you don't that, the evolvement of the platform gets dispersed. Everybody's starting doing their own thing, they're inventing the wheel again.
Yeah.
So that can go wrong. There is a lot of, the development time takes longer if you don't have the base correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the maintenance, if you have a structure but your previous apps, for example, don't adhere to your coding guidelines or anything, because it was simply a start, so also backwards compatible in that sense. If they are not according to that standard, in the long run you will have to adjust to them, you have to make changes, and if you don't understand what is happening there because it's not according to the standards, then that will only cause more time in the future.
Yeah, okay, well, definitely need a good base. And I see a sign from the moderator. I'm excited to see what it is. I hope it's not technical difficulties. I hope a question.
No, it's introduction question, I think. The question from Jeroen is, what makes low-code so interesting for organizations?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
That's a big
well,
one.
now I have to sell Mendix apparently, or low-code platforms. No, what I think it's interesting, for us it was interesting, let's make it a bit more personal. For us it was interesting because we didn't have a lot of, development knowledge, expertise, or we didn't have any in-house developers. And what low-code does is it really democratizes development. So it makes it just easier to jump into development, which doesn't mean that under the hood, of course, it's still technology, so it's still complex and you still need the right knowledge. But basically, low-code and Mendix, it lowers the bar for an organization to step into custom development.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helped us really to start building custom solutions for our internal business departments. So I think what does low-code bring for an organization, it's really an easy step up to start building your own software.
And I think on top of that, if you compare to, for example, high code, Mendix is way faster than high code in that sense. So it can deliver value much faster for an organization to use low code instead of high code techniques if you need to build something custom for your own processes.
Cool, nice that you mentioned high code. We have some questions about that too, so we'll get there soon. First, I want to go a little back to the beginning. So now we know why it's important to have a good base, why it's nice to have Mendix in the first part, or low code. What skills are required to scale my team, so on the people side?
It was mentioned already, I think, briefly, but you need to have a combination of people. You need to have somebody who knows what the end goal of your application is. You need to have people that can help structure the application, that can make sure that certain pieces are kept together, separated from each other. And of course you need people who develop the application, Mendix makers or developers, that can translate the requirements into actual source code, being Mendix or something else, but really having all varieties that you see basically also in high code but also in low code, you need to have to scale really up your team. And it's having less technical experience helps with Mendix, or Mendix helps you with that, because you don't need to know all the technicalities. We make it easy for you to develop an app, and now I'm promoting Mendix, I hear what I'm doing. But you cannot have a team with only developers, that never works. So you need to make sure that all the other ingredients are there as well.
Yeah, Yeah, which also is a question. How do I structure my team to make the most out of it? Which is maybe a nice question for you.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I also had to really build up a team within Lidl Netherlands. One of the biggest advantages, of course, that you can be fast, as Bob explained, with Mendix. But it means that in the start you have to really pick the right people to join you, because I think if you start in the beginning with a really technical guy, probably he or she developer has a trouble really seeing that vision, thinking ahead, being really pragmatic. So I think in the beginning you need to invest in people that might not be the most technical, but also know really the business side and can help you on a little bit broader scale. The more you grow, the more you have to consider, okay, what's right for my team at this point in time, what's needed for my organization at this point in time. And what I mean by that is you have certain expertises like UI UX design, testing, very advanced agile Scrum roles. All those things, the more you work with the platform, the more you have to think, okay, which of these are now nice to add to my team. So I don't think there's really a defined path of, okay, first I need like 1 or 2 developers, then I need 1 designer, then I need 1 really technical guy. No, really look into your own team, look what expertises you already have, because there might already be more in your own team than you think of in the first place. And really make a strategic decision, what's important right now for my portfolio, for my business. So we chose lately to focus a little bit more on design, because we found, okay, we have a couple of developers, design might have been a little bit not acknowledged enough in the projects, which then led to product owners being not so happy with the way the application felt. So that's something that we've been investing in a little bit more, but still we chose right now still to do that externally and not hire someone ourselves, because we think, okay, let's first explore how much it adds for us, and then we can make a decision, okay, do we need really a designer or not?
Yeah, if the benefits is high enough. So you can go quite slowly.
Yeah.
Just in whatever needs you're having at the moment.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
And what if you cannot find the resources? Maybe Bob could take
I think you can also look in-house. So Mendix is a low-code platform that enables makers to start making more. So typical organizations have a lot of also Excel savvy people who can start a small app in that sense. And of course you don't need to let them do all technical things, but to start building the first apps, to get your first successes, I think those are people who can become great makers in the Mendix community. And then you don't have to search outside, but you can find them in-house and you can enable them to become a Mendix maker.
Nice.
Aren't you worried that without technical background, those people still end up in the maze of the technicality of the application?
Yes, but that's also where you say you need to have a diversified team. So you need to have somebody who can guide them as well. So that's definitely something that you need. That's something that you need to find. But other than that, it's guiding people. It's also if you start hiring junior developers or whatsoever, they also need to learn it. So it's a question, do you want to get juniors in there, or do you want to reschool different people who have at least the interest in the topic?
Have you seen that happen in practice? Because we also have colleagues that are more tech savvy or Excel savvy, as you mentioned.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen lots of different kind of technical backgrounds, either finance personnel, old ERP, AS400 developers, functional consultants. All those kind of profiles really fit into a Mendix profile.
Cool. Good to know. Maybe I can do some sourcing in the own organization then.
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to look for opportunities inside your own organization as well.
Yeah. But of course also what we've been using a lot is external capacity. Also, if you have solid business cases, then you can justify hiring external development. And on top of that, it speeds up your development as well. Yeah, because an external partner, you can just make agreements about, I want the project to be delivered at that point in time. Yeah. And sometimes with an internal team, there's a lot more that you have to consider. Yeah. And it's just more difficult also to sometimes live up to the expectations and deadlines. So
so you have a dedicated person instead of someone who has to do their daily tasks as well. Yeah, definitely. I have one now. We're talking about the business side of it, how do you show people in your business that low code is more than just some office applications?
Yeah,
Might be
yeah.
difficult
That's by really looking for the right business cases. I mean, if you go into the organization, if you don't have a base, let's assume that you start with low code and you go into the organization, people will react, quite mellow, like, okay, nice, there comes IT with the solution. But you really need to invest in looking for the right business case with the right financial value. And once you get hold of someone that's enthusiastic about what you're telling them, speak with them, make them more like an ambassador of what you're doing, and keep on searching for that one first business case that really shows the potential of Mendix. And that's sometimes, and give yourself the time to do that, because often it can feel like, okay, I'm already half a year going around all these business departments with my story and nobody really wants to jump in. To be honest, I think it took us maybe 1.5 years or something to really find the right business case. In the meantime, we still did some minor development, but those weren't really, they were like you said, some office apps. And then when you find the first real app, then you have a nice showcase that you can use for all the other business departments.
And let everybody know how awesome it can be.
But I think in that case, what was then the ingredient that made low code work?
Well, for us it was also that, of course, we didn't do high code, and in our organization where we have a strong international influence, we found a business case where low code fitted, because we knew that we could actually build the application with low code in quite a fast time. So there were also some ideas that we actually passed that we said, that's going to be taking too long, or maybe it's difficult with low code since we are also not so experienced. So eventually we found a case that fitted all our boxes, like good financial value, reasonable time that we needed to develop it. And I think that was really the key for success, that, good business case, important process in the organization, that's also something. I mean, office applications typically don't support the most important processes. So important process, good financial case, and also the time that you need to develop it. Because that's also, of course, what low code really tells you, like, you can develop faster, so then show it. And in our case it was easy because we never developed, so everything was fast. But you understand what I mean.
Yeah. I think it's also important to celebrate those successes, because by celebrating that, you can translate that story to other business areas and say, hey, this is what we can do with low code, and show really what you can do to get those new business cases, to get those new ideas on, hey, this is something that we can use.
That's why I said try to get that first product owner or business person, try to make them really an ambassador and let them speak to their management, to their colleagues, because everyone within the organization has their own network. So, try to spread the word like that, spread your success, and indeed celebrate.
Yeah, definitely celebrating successes is something you should not forget. I see another question.
Yes, there is another question, another one from Jeroen. And I think it was about one of the topics that you were discussing a little bit before. As it becomes easier to develop software, would it also be a risk spending resourcing on non-valuable applications, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, of course, it's always a risk, but the way I see it is if you want to speed up the digital transformation or digitization in your organization, you need to also use successes to justify other business cases that might be a little bit less relevant. I think also speaking in the scope of scaling up your amount of applications, you're not going to have 100 winners. I think that's almost not imaginable. But to not leave parts of your organizations behind, use the successes of other applications to justify maybe a little less beneficial business cases for other departments, because it allows you to also create that base for that certain department.
I think that the value in these business cases is not necessarily for the business itself, it's for the Mendix platform to show itself. And I think that's also something that you need to consider in your business case for valuable applications in that sense. So sometimes it can be that some applications can be higher in terms of added value for a business, but maybe you want to diversify your portfolio or whatsoever. And I would say then still some other application might get higher priority in my opinion, because you can speak to a whole different range of business users with a different application if you go that route.
Yeah. But also don't forget the importance of experimentation. Maybe if the business case is not so high, you can take a higher risk with the application. It is easier if that one fails because there is not a high value attached to it. Mm-hmm. So it helps to grow the developer community inside your organization. It helps to build up the experience, what you can do with low code.
Yeah, which comes back to celebrating successes and show how awesome it can be if you use it right. Nice, and I have one on here, and we're going a little more technical, I think, which is how can I prioritize my backlog of applications?
Yeah, I think that adds on to what I just said. Maybe I would always prioritize the backlog of applications based on the added value for the business. Mm-hmm. So, okay, what application is adding most value to my business? But in that consideration, I always would also consider what is the added value for the Mendix platform within my organization, because you need to get that sponsorship within the organization that Mendix is the added value there. And even though added value of two applications might be quite similar, having a diverse range of people supporting the platform is really something that can grow your application landscape quite fast.
Yeah, that's actually also we took a little bit of that strategy, look for all these different business departments and really speak to them individually to create your network within the organization, and maybe push out a lot of applications to departments to just get the story known, get the platform embedded in the organization, because it also makes sure that if for whatever reason the organization is starting to question your choice to use low code, you have a lot of backing from the whole organization and you're not focused and depending on the backup of one department.
Yeah. Anything to add there?
No, I don't think I have a lot to add here. The main reason you develop stuff is indeed business value. You want to achieve something, you want to make something simpler in the business process you facilitate. And there can always be choices, what is more important or less important. Depending on how many teams you have, you can also maybe deprioritize a high priority thing or move it to another team to give the team the pace to go on a lower speed, to take a breath, to reevaluate what they have done the last couple of time, to make improvements, to set out, to adjust the strategy they have a little bit. But it's a balance that you need to make every time.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something you do one time and then stop.
No. And I think it's good that you mentioned the people as well in this, because of course always when you have a backlog for applications, you also have an available set of developers, and of course the skills of the developers need to match the skills required for a project. And that like you said, you already skipped on some because that's maybe not too technical or something like that in the beginning. It really needs to be the match there, both on the people side, on the technical side, and the value side.
Yeah, it all needs to work together. Yeah, definitely. And more on the technical side then, this one. How do I govern my data? It's a very broad question.
That really depends on what kind of applications or landscape you build, I think. But if you make a solution consisting out of multiple components, it's especially important that you make some guidelines how you share data and that you always approve an owner of the data, for example. Mm-hmm. There can never be a question, who owns the customer, who owns the order, who owns the warehouse. And then you make agreements how people can interact with the data, how you can modify data, and write it down. Make a guideline how you share data and what is needed to keep it up to date, and know who's consuming your data.
Exactly. I think an architectural drawing of how the data flows through your organization is critical in this case to know where data lives and that people are aware of where maybe also your data is being used. Because yeah, if you're not aware of where the data resides, either duplicated or consumed or published, then that makes the governance of your data really a risk.
Yeah, and what are the risks of not doing it right?
If you don't govern your data correctly, you get loss of data quality. So for example, data can live in two places and it's inconsistent, then you don't know which is truth, and then finding out the truth can be really a hassle, and also fixing it up to the truth will be really a pain. So it's better to set up that structure correctly, again, in order to scale it up in a fast
so you don't
pace.
have to go backwards.
Yes.
Faster.
I think in every project that we do, we always think beforehand about data governance in the sense that, okay, you need to look at the bigger picture, look outside your own application and look at the whole landscape and think about data in the whole landscape sense and not in it's specific for my application, because then you run into exactly those issues that Bob mentioned, that you have to maintain it in a couple of places, and that never works.
No, I can imagine.
And then I would rather go for one application that governs one type of data where it's being maintained, and then two other parties can still consume that data and use it for their purposes. But then you have one application, one service that can actually govern that specific data.
But it means maybe in some cases in the practical world is that you have to have a difficult conversation with your business, because maybe you have 3 business departments that all want their own application that uses that data, and then you have to, I think you can perfectly facilitate the discussion amongst them, like who is the data owner, because I think also in organizations there's still a lot of data that isn't really, that doesn't really have one ultimate responsible, and that is the case right now doesn't mean that in the new world with applications that are being shared, data that's being shared, that it should remain that way. So it's also an opportunity, I think, if you start with Mendix, lowcode, to facilitate those discussions.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different topic than lowcode, of course. But
definitely, well, it depends
but
on more than just
yeah.
Mendix. Yeah.
But I think Mendix really helps in this as well, also with add-ons like Data Hub and that kind of stuff. It facilitates the ease to integrate your systems together to make sure that you have an application which is actually owning the data, and you interact the data within your landscape completely. And I think that's a big win from the Mendix platform there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over time you start from the base, you approve an owner, or you set an owner for the data, then you start sharing it, and tools will help to see where the data flows. Tools will definitely help us in the future to get better insights into what is happening in the landscape.
Yeah.
It's not that we need to maintain those Excel sheets anymore. There are a lot of things that help to make you more efficient in doing these things.
Yeah, definitely. And then you mentioned the landscape, you all mentioned the landscape, which is kind of the title of what we're doing today. So I have a question here. How do I manage an ever-growing landscape in the technical depth? Because
I think it's first important there to really define within your organization what technical debt means.
Mm-hmm.
And there can be a lot of definitions, and I won't try to make a one cut of definition here, but if you see that teams are struggling to change software, to change components, then it's time to first take a step back, look what is happening, and refactor the application to make it more flexible again. And that can be on a very different levels, and maybe at some point you see that 5 teams are using the same thing or doing the same patterns. Then you can maybe find a team that facilitates that pattern and maintains that module. But also there it's important that all the components that you use have an owner, that you can point back to somebody who is responsible for the component and is being able to upgrade it, to maintain it. And maybe there's a component at some point that is used but doesn't need a lot of attention. It's fine, as long as it keeps running and somebody knows about it and is able enough to keep it running. It's fine. Don't spend a lot of time on it. And people will say, yeah, I don't like this solution, it's old and I don't know, but sometimes it's just fine.
Sometimes it's just good as it is.
I think in that case, definitely it's just fine, but you need to have proper documentation on it as well, because if it stays like that,
Yes.
In the end, people will leave organizations and knowledge will leave organizations. And if you don't have that documented, then you are in for a treat again. So I think with that, it's crucial to always keep your documentation up to date. And even known bugs or known technical debt should always be documented in that sense.
And there's an end of life cycle for your software if things are correct. So at some point, maybe that component just can't be stopped because nobody's using it anymore, some other process took over. So there are lots of ways to handle existing stuff in your landscape and your applications to keep up to date or just to stop with it.
Nice, cool.
And maybe to add, I think always the creation of technical debt should always be minimized in that sense. So I often hear, oh, I will fix that next sprint. No, don't fix it next sprint, because next sprint you will have other priorities again. Fix it now. Make sure that it's production worthy after your first iteration.
Yeah.
A good practice is refactor first and then implement, because most developers will say, I'm almost done, I just have to refactor, and that is the wrong order.
Nice. And I see another question.
Yes, there is another question, not from Jeroen this time, but from Omid. The question is, how do you ensure ownership of the business with data, but also the application functionalities? And what capabilities does the business need to take this ownership?
Long question.
Yeah, it may be to really pinpoint a skill that's I think a bit difficult, but what the most important thing is, what we've noticed is just a big commitment to the product. So if they believe that it really helps their colleagues to run an efficient business process, that's most of the times what you need, because I mean in the end it's just an application. So anybody who spends enough time in it will learn about the functionality, will learn how to use it, will learn to understand how things work together on a user level. And in my opinion, a business or a product owner, that's about the level that they should know. So with enough commitment and belief that the application is important for them, then you have enough. They don't really need a particular skill. Of course, it's really helpful if they are able to look outside of the application and think about new features that will improve it. But that's also something that we right now do from our development team, that sometimes we say, hey, maybe we can improve this or that, or steer them a little bit in a particular direction. But it also really depends on how you see the role of a product owner, because that really differs from organization to organization, which responsibilities the product owners have. Sometimes it's really a dedicated role. In our case, it's not a dedicated role, but it's an extra role that we give people in the organization. So then you have to interact with them in a different way than, of course, when you have really dedicated product owners.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the scale in that sense is indeed important. If you have a small set of applications, then it can be facilitated in a team. If the solution gets bigger, you see that there is some people that govern the whole solution by itself and help teams to structure that, and then product owner or product manager is one of the roles that needs to facilitate it, and they own the functionality. That they will make sure that functionality exists, evolves.
I see another question coming in just right behind you. Perfect timing.
Yeah, questions are rolling in now in the chat. And that's great, because that's the format of this Studio LINKIT session. I have a question from Siwen. I hope I say your name correctly. The question is ability to scale infrastructure or onboarding new apps crucial to the success of scaling the application landscape? And are there challenges in that area?
I think the infrastructure is not necessarily the problem. Typically, if you think about what you can scale, you have infrastructure, you have a platform, you have an application and you have the data to think about what you can encapsulate and reuse typically. And I think the platform and the infrastructure is something that typically already is being taken care of by Mendix itself with their cloud and their platform to develop. I think that the main advantages to modularize and reuse is either the data in a service or certain processes. So for example, a workflow approval that typically is the same for 2-3 different kind of processes, but with different data objects that you can encapsulate and reuse again in different applications. And I think your true capability to scale is in capturing both where can I reuse my data, where can I reuse my functionalities, because the other two is already something that Mendix takes care of.
Yeah. Really investing in that base that we spoke about in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have done that, then infrastructure doesn't necessarily have to be the bottleneck of your scaling.
Yeah.
The bottleneck will be people, but also coming back to the experimentation of things. If you want have a solution that needs to have one additional feature and you don't want to build it in, think of how you can build it externally, and then it's nice if you can just put an extra app in the cloud. Just build a new project, try it, and then spin it up, see if it works, and then spin it down if it doesn't work. So I think that in also scaling, you need a bit of flexibility from your infrastructure. You don't need to manage that yourself, but you need to have the ability to add and remove components on the go of the solution you're building.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that answers the question from, I forgot the name. I'm so sorry.
The audience.
The audience. Nice. Good save. And then I have a question, and maybe that's a nice one for Bob. How do I transfer my application in the best way? What's easiest?
I think if you're talking about transferring the application from developers or from cloud, then I think in developers it's important to at least what we discussed already have documentation. So functional documentation on your application is crucial. Even though Mendix is quite self-explanatory, you still need to detail what is the core function of this application, so that people who are new to the application can read that and see what's going on in the application and determine the end goal. Furthermore, I already mentioned known bugs, technical debt. Those are important features that you need to share within the team members, so that if something happens, they know where to look at least and how to fix it. And finally, also I think technical specifications, so technical configurations that you made in an application, that is also something that is definitely something that needs to be shared across your team members. I do, however, think it's important to share a lot. I think knowledge is key in that, but I also see that once you start scaling, not everybody can know all the applications that you have within your organization anymore. So I think at that point it's crucial that you have somebody who can see all the synergies between the different applications, see if something is being used there, can map that to other applications in terms of modular functionality, in order to reuse that and not have two different components live besides each other. I think that is a crucial role within the scaling part.
Yeah, which is what you talked about in the beginning, about inventing the wheel 10 times again.
Yeah.
Which is not something you want to be doing.
No, then it's time to step back and see if you can build one solution.
Yeah, for all the wheels that are being invented.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I have, the time's almost up. I told you it would be fast. A question that I think is very interesting as well is, we mentioned high code a while back. Can you extend Mendix with high code and vice versa?
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, but that Mendix actually offers you to build your own extensions on top of it in various ways. So if there are things that you cannot do within standard Mendix, there's always the option to add widgets, to add JavaScript to it. You can extend functions with Java, so that option is there. And the other way around, it's not like you import Mendix into an existing project and then start using it, but that is a good time to reevaluate the structure of the application you're building. Maybe you have a really complicated backend process that needs to do a lot of calculations or facilitates interaction with IoT stuff, for example, and then you collect all your data there and you build a front end in Mendix. So yeah, Mendix there are lots of options to extend full code or high code,
High code,
as
however
you call
you want to call it.
Usually
yeah,
I call it
stack,
full code
whatever, yeah.
with a Mendix solution. I don't think you're limited, and you're also not limited to only high code or Mendix. The combination is a really nice combination to have.
Cool. Is it something you've done? Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to place one remark on extending the Mendix application with custom code. I typically always like to keep as much as possible within Mendix. So something can be made really easy within a full code, for example, but then typically I always still choose to keep it in Mendix because that's maintainable more, especially if you don't have the technical expertise within a team or whatsoever. I think it's crucial that you maybe make that design decision to keep everything within Mendix at that point.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid remark, and that depends highly on the team that you have in place. But indeed, Mendix is about solving the technicalities of development.
Yes.
So you should not build all your stuff then in Java, just in a Mendix skill.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, yeah. And just as we're about to run out of time, I see there's a question coming. Yeah. There's a question coming.
A last minute question.
A last minute question, and I have a last minute question.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm already here. Is there one thing I should do to start preparing for Scale tomorrow? What would you recommend me to do? It's a question from Mike.
What I would do is create a holistic map of the digital processes that you would like to facilitate and look for the synergies there. So really, what kind of processes are duplicated across different areas so that you can reuse them, because that's where you can make your true power in the Mendix platform, reusing them, and that makes your scaling faster because you can facilitate two processes with one solution.
Oh, nice.
He agrees.
You said it very well. Nobody has anything to add. Nice. Then my last minute question.
I also have one more question.
Oh, hold on. There's one more. Well, audience goes first.
One more question. Creating lots of apps is great, but how do you know your applications are secure, and are there best practices that can be applied at scale?
The first thing you should always do is enable the security features of your applications. Any tool you use, Mendix is no different. And then it's about having a review on those. I think peer review of all the development you do is important here. There's no silver bullet to make your application secure. So make sure you spend time on the security features in a product, learn them, know how to use them, have them reviewed, and if you really want to have additional security or guarantees on top of it, hire an external party that can validate the application for you.
Yeah, and maybe good to mention that a lot of security measures are already being taken within the Mendix platform. I think the main securities that you need to worry about is the one that you're developing yourself within your application. So that's basically mainly about data consistency, making sure that people can access data they can only see. And that's something that an experienced developer will typically peer review for you. And that can find the mistakes there, if there are any.
Yeah, and from a process perspective, I think you can involve your ISO or an external partner already in the design phase. You know, don't wait until you are nearly done with the product and then say, please review my product, because then you will always have to refactor it to live up to the security standards. And yeah, the platform will be quite secure from itself, but still, yeah, it's something that you don't know what you're going to build, and you can always create vulnerabilities. So yeah, just put it high on your priority list. You know, don't put it somewhere low and then find out that you have a big leak.
Yeah, no, that will be problematic. And you didn't involve your designer yet, so yeah, dramatic. Well then, finally my last question, and then we have to wrap up. How can we move from problem-solving apps into innovation, just to give the people at home something to think about more?
I think that's also about enabling your developers. So make sure that your developers have time to play with the Mendix platform as well, so that they know what kind of features it has, so that new features can actually be used and you can actually add that value of the complete Mendix platform in that. And of course, you need to have the business case to innovate as well. So you need to think of it, and if there is a fit, I think then you will find it in the end. But you also need to enable the people to be able to execute an innovation event if something like that happens.
I think the most important part about innovation is that the chances are quite high that you end up with something that's not really worth a lot in terms of business value. It's more that you have knowledge, okay, this doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult thing to sell in organizations, because you can't ask budget for developing something that doesn't end up resulting in anything. So that's why I think what Bob said, really enabling your development team, spend X amount of time just for yourself, you know, just that's how you can leverage the potential of people. And yeah, first prove yourself, and when you start to scale, you probably have proven yourself enough to also get a budget that you can spend freely without being, without having to justify where you spend it for.
Yeah.
And then, just make the time for it. Make it a priority. Just like with security, make it a priority. Don't do it on the side, because then you will always decide, okay, we're going to work on the running issues, on the operational stuff, which is important, but then you will never be able to innovate.
Yeah. Yeah, you just get stuck in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everybody is writing their priority lists while listening.
And to add what Bob is saying, there is always new features in a platform available. And if you know these features, challenge the process that you're in. And a lot of innovations in an organization happen just by challenging the process and to take a different view of what you want to accomplish. And with that, you optimize the process for the people that work with your application, and that is innovation by itself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair. Nice.
Good one.
That's a nice one to end on, I think. I'm just gonna check if there's one last minute question.
No, this was
Nothing. Nice. Great. Well, then I would like to thank you three for being here and at least telling me a little more about Mendix and the people at home. I can say with certainty I know more than when I came into this session. Thank you. And I would like to thank everyone at home for watching this and asking your questions and just participating in our studio. And well, then this is goodbye and see you next time.